I don't know what they're smoking over there at Princeton. The focus on ridicule.
I'm white, and I've got everything I need. No one clutches their purses when they're in a room alone with me. And I can drive through any neighborhood I please at any hour, and the police don't do a thing. So if I see a penny on the ground, I leave it alone and fucking flip it. I'm a straight white male in America. I've got everything I need. I'm a guy getting paid more than a girl with a degree. And I can walk down the streets after dark, no one wants to rape me. And I can get a girl pregnant and just as easily flee. Just like my straight white male dad did to me. So if I see a penny on the ground, I leave it alone and fucking flip it. I'm a straight white male in America. I've got all the luck I need. I've got a pile of broken mirrors and I'm walking under ladders and I'm spilling tons of salt, but to me that doesn't matter, cause my skin and my gender and my orientation are the best things to have if you live in this nation. I recommend it highly. If I see a penny on the ground, I leave it alone and fucking flip it. I'm a straight white male in America. I've got all the luck I need. Shit's gonna work out for me, cause I'm a straight white male in America. I've got all the luck I need.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Intellectual Dollar Tree. We do the show live every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Pacific right here on Twitch. That's twitch.tv/Echoplex Media for anyone on the podcast. We're also simulcasting it to other places, but no one watches that shit anywhere else, and so that doesn't matter. You can support this project at echoplexmedia.com/support, and you can, buy stuff. Or you can sub to the channel like my co-host just did. Very nice of you to pay to be on your own show. And of course, bits on Twitch are always good. And I am producer Dave. And you can find me on Grindr, depending on your zip code.
And I am HK Perrin. You can find me on Mastodon at hperrin at port87.social. And also, I pay to be here.
Oh, well, fucking great. You should also join as a fucking Live Laugh Lucifer member over at eplex.store while you're at it.
Heck yeah, Live Laugh Lucifer. Live Laugh, learn to code, Live Laugh Lucifer. The two is both the same.
Live, laugh, learn to code is when you're basic and you live in Cupertino. So we've covered this guy in the post game a little bit lately, but I took a look and we haven't actually spoken about the most humble man in the world in a while on the main feed here, HK.
I don't have the award behind me. I used to have this award up on the I used to stream in front of a door and I had the award on the door behind me. The award for the most humble man in the universe. Most humble man in the world, most humble man in the most humble man in existence, period. Just Eric Weinstein.
Just the humblest. So
yep.
This is
there is none humbler than Eric Weinstein. So and he will tell you so.
This is just gonna be fantastic. Somebody in the chat mentioned that the door behind you at your last place was actually the one they stole from the Capitol on January 6th.
It was.
So
yep, I paid the guy to go steal it. That's right.
I have some predictions about this. One, that we are not getting through all fucking 3 hours of it during the show or the post game. And two, I have a prediction that one or the other of us is actually going to get angry at Eric Weinstein during this.
3 hours. Jesus Christ.
Like, I don't believe in a hell, but hell is just having to have a 3 hour conversations with Eric Weinstein with 15-minute breaks to go fucking chain smoke 3 cigarettes right between each one.
Shooting up heroin in between. That's the only way you could deal with that.
At least you'd pass out and fucking. What happens if you're in hell, though? Could you die again?
If you're in hell, the heroin just doesn't work.
Oh man, neither do the cigarettes. Everything's on fire.
If you're in hell, the heroin acts like caffeine.
Also,
It
everything's
makes
on,
you more aware of what's happening.
also everything's on fire, and somehow you just can't get your cigarette lit. Anyway, without any further ado, I'm sure the people listening both live and on the podcast would rather you and I just have a chat about the concept of hell. But without any further ado, here is Eric Weinstein on the Chris Williamson Show. And the title of this is Why Does the Modern World Make No Sense? And I'm fucking sorry. I know this will do good numbers, but I'm sorry.
I do like that the title of the video that we're watching right now.
How do you feel? Given
It shows that the video is in 4K. In case you were worried about not seeing Eric Weinstein in like 4K, if 720p Eric Weinstein is not enough for you, don't worry. You can count his pores in this video.
You might have to watch the source material on another device, though, because we still record in 720p, even though we have all the compute horsepower in the world now, thanks to historian Matt.
most recent Fallout.
These opening questions are incredible.
Man, they're already to the isn't it great we're having this conversation part of it, and we're fucking 12 seconds in. This opening question is incredible. Oh, I think we're going to get 10 minutes through this in an hour.
It's amazing. It's amazing that it came to this. And
What, you being on a podcast in the middle of a brick room? You've been on 1,000 podcasts in the middle
You're
of
the
a brick
last
room.
generation who will continue to see Harvard as this shining city on a hill.
Yep, definitely.
Well,
Like
that's something to do now.
yours and my kids and their kids below them, like they won't see Harvard as anything good. Last time Harvard's gonna be good.
To be fair, Steven Pinker still teaches there.
I mean, it's Harvard. Like Harvard is an institution in history. Like, of course, it's going to be good for our kids and their kids below them. Like, this guy has such a pompous view of himself that he thinks that he's better than Harvard.
So Harvard is good as a status symbol, right? But like that doesn't mean it's good. Like somebody in chat just said,
Yeah,
actually,
but it's better than
like
Eric
somebody
Weinstein.
like somebody in chat just said, actually, it creates monsters. If you were to listen to a podcast such as Robert Evans Behind the Bastards, you would learn that Harvard actually creates the world's monsters.
It certainly has created monsters, but it's better than Eric Weinstein.
I think it's a disgrace, and we can't talk about it, which is the fascinating part, that we are effectively losing our society because we're afraid to say certain things, because we're being made afraid to say certain things.
What do you mean?
Well, okay, so as a Harvard alum, you get the Harvard magazine, and this thing is incredible because it's just always Harvard people promoting other Harvard people in this sort of PR.
Sir, it's the Harvard magazine. What the fuck else is it supposed to be doing? It's supposed to be selling you a Toyota? What the fuck are you talking about?
He's upset that the Harvard magazine is by Harvard kids for Harvard kids.
And talks about Harvard and some of the things the people who went there are doing. It's like being mad that your own picture's in the fucking yearbook, man.
The Nepotism magazine.
Yeah. PR Fest. And I think I remember that the article introducing Claudine Gay was entitled A Scholar's Scholar. And I knew from the get-go that this was not going to go well. Because, you know, I don't think people understand what...
Hold on, I
Harvard
knew from the
is and how
get-go that this was not going to go well. Was that because she was a black woman?
He wouldn't. I don't think he would say that. Honestly,
You wouldn't say that.
he wouldn't. He wouldn't say that. He might make. Well, let's listen. Listen, attempts to read this man's mind are probably really bad for your mental health. So let's do a little less trying to pretend to read his mind, because the last thing you want to do is actually figure out how to do it and then get stuck in this guy's head for a couple days, HK. Right?
How it functions and why it's different. Harvard is really the fusion of two separate institutions. One is about brilliance, and one is about power. And so you can think about this as the sharpest.
No, that's the same institution.
And the sharpest elbows. And the sharp mind crowd gets tons of resources because the sharp elbow crowd makes sure that power is used to perpetuate Harvard's place of privilege. And the sharp mind crowd contributes prestige to the sharp elbow crowd. And so by virtue of the fact that you can't deconflate the sharp minds and the sharp elbows, Harvard continues to have this very special place. Now, what is this special place? Why isn't it just a university like any other?
I mean, day to day for the students, a lot of times it is just a university, much like any other. You get up, you're hungover, you go to class, fucking go to Starbucks. You hope Peter Boghossian isn't standing in the fucking courtyard asking you whether you strongly agree with some dumbass statement he's asking you about. You don't like some of your professors. You really don't like some of your other professors, like Steven Pinker. Maybe one of your professors was like on the Epstein flight logs. It's really not that different than any other university in the day by day. It's just that like at a party, I guess, when you go back home, you get to tell everyone over and over again that you're going to Harvard until they like wish that you wouldn't have come to the party, unless you're cool. And then they're just like, how's college? You're like, oh, it's fine, whatever. I don't think that the day-to-day experience of the students is going to be dramatically different at Harvard.
I think sort of two or three principal reasons. One of which is that Harvard is sort of an extension of the U.S. government. The government department, which is sort of
how
Harvard's
so?
version of
Excuse
poli-sci,
me.
is
How
kind of-
how
Well,
is Harvard
he's-
an
he's-
extension of the U.S. government?
Well, you have to let him. You have to let the guy tell you the dumb reason he thinks that. Actually,
Okay.
Harvard is sort of an extension of the U.S. government. The government department, which is sort of Harvard's version of poli-sci, is kind of an extension of the State Department at times. The economics department ends up setting economic policy in many ways for the United States. And above all, there is this concept that in every field, there's usually one institution that sets the narrative. So, for example, in journalism, the New York Times is different than all other newspapers and news organs because of its focus on what we sometimes hear of as narrative-driven journalism. Now, people now talk a lot more about narrative, but 15 years ago, I don't think this was common knowledge, that the editorial room at the New York Times is a place where people thought about what the long arcs of stories were. And you figured out what the arc of the story was before the facts came in. So, for example, Hillary is inevitable was a long arc in narrative-driven journalism. It wasn't true, but all the information that came in when Hillary was running against Donald Trump was fed through this prism of the inevitability of Hillary Clinton. In the same way, Harvard practices narrative-driven academics. It tells you what is happening,
But, like,
what the grand arcs
so-
are.
That would have been true if like 10,000 people had decided Hillary instead of Donald Trump. Like the way elections work in the United States makes it such that like 3 million people deciding one candidate over another doesn't actually matter. What matters is like 10,000 people deciding that, and those 10,000 people live in like bumfuck nowhere.
or in this case, actually, this was like states like Pennsylvania that has big cities where the turnout.
Sure. But like you know,
but that's but like we're
not in like
we're not. I'm not
California,
doing
where,
the
like,
2016.
1 in 10
I'm not relitigating the 2016 election. I
Yeah.
refuse to do that ever again on this channel. So I will just talk over you anytime you try to do that.
okay.
The point is here.
Well, like the story would be so different if it was like if it wasn't up to those 10,000.
So we're not
people.
we're not relitigating the 2016 election. I'll kick you off the show. I mean, it's kind of funny, but I'm not kidding.
Okay.
And those, just like the 2016 election, are very often untrue. And so that's a way in which Harvard serves power. It brings people in who are brilliant, and then it takes the ones of those who are willing to play ball with the engines of power, and it enters into the storytelling mode in which Harvard sets the tone for everyone.
Wait, what?
So when you lose Harvard, it's very important and very different. But the last thing that I would say that really distinguishes Harvard is that Harvard, there's the open part of Harvard, the classrooms, and there's the closed part of Harvard that you can't see at all.
That's like the janitor's closet.
Yeah, janitorial services.
Right? That is like the phone room. That is the
Maybe the mail room because like it's illegal to look at through other people's mail.
yeah, and obviously like students don't have access to the mail room, right? Like
Yep.
there are locked doors inside of almost any building in any institution of a significant size. This is true, Eric. Good job. He figured out the concept of a door that you can lock. There might even be private bathrooms in maybe somebody's office that they have a lock on. Oh shit, people's office doors are locked.
It's true. That's the private side of Harvard.
In the cafeteria, there are locked doors. Like you can't just walk in where the people are cooking stuff. There's all kinds of health code violations that you have to. He's onto something here.
That's true. We got to open that up.
Gotta let Eric in there to cook to boil chicken with no spices. Like,
Open it to all the rats who want to cook.
And it's sort of a system of star chambers. And
if I had one of those, I'd fucking lock the door. If I had like a star chamber, whatever the fuck that means, I'd be like, oh, gotta lock the door for this.
people who have not tangled with Harvard would comprehend how much of what Harvard gets done, it gets done behind closed doors because it can't be done in the open.
Well, what do you mean?
I'll give you a crazy example. I was not allowed to attend.
As opposed to
my
the
own
normal
thesis
example that he gives, which isn't crazy.
I was not allowed to attend my own thesis defense. Now, you're not an academic by training. If you tell that to an academic, they don't even understand what you're saying. They think that you're making a joke, or you must not have understood something, or maybe you were sick that day and you had to zoom in, or who knows what. But I don't mean that at all. I mean, when I tried to get my PhD, the Harvard math department instituted a rule that said you could not attend your own thesis defense. You could not determine who would present your thesis, your dissertation. So basically what happened is if you had an advisor, which almost everyone did, your advisor presented your thesis behind closed doors. Nobody's ever heard of this in the history of academics.
I mean,
Just how Claudine Gay
that
got away
doesn't
with it.
sound like the worst system, right? Like if your defense stands on its own, then you don't need to be there to defend it. You would only need to be there if your defense, like your PhD dissertation was, I don't want to say indefensible, but like difficult to defend.
So
You know what I mean?
I'd like to propose a hypothesis that is probably false, but it's the universe that I'd like to live in. I have a feeling that people in the math department who had met Eric Weinstein were the ones who implemented this policy.
Yeah. Also, was he a Harvard student at the time, or was he trying to get a PhD while not being a student that was attending Harvard?
So we'll have to assume, for the sake of like this, I mean, I think he was at Harvard, but like again, my headcanon on this is that everybody's like, all right, listen, the last thing we want to do is have this guy in a room telling us about his thesis. Okay, listen, we met a lot of fucking weirdos, but this guy takes the cake, so we're gonna have to implement a new policy because this guy's getting towards the end of his PhD program. We're gonna give him his PhD to get rid of him, but we're not gonna sit in a room with him for fucking 5 hours and listen to him fucking talk. Everybody else's defense usually takes about 90 minutes, 2 hours. Not this guy. And who has the time?
No, I don't know. Claudine Gay was taken down for two different reasons. One reason she was taken down was for not having crisper statements about the uniformity of application of rules of codes of conduct when it came to Jewish students.
That's not true.
So it's one thing whether you have a free speech policy, or maybe you have a code of conduct.
Yeah, I would say that she was attacked for Zion on behalf of Zionism. She was attacked on behalf of Zionism.
So I almost never use that word, actually. It's charged, but she got in front of Congress and was asked like very specific questions about hypotheticals and about protests that happen on campus. And her answers weren't what people wanted them to be because she didn't always know the answer. And that's actually fine with me, right? She's the head of a university, but she doesn't know the answer to every question about every individual thing. And she maybe wasn't used to being grilled by fucking weirdos like Marjorie Taylor Greene and shit. So she didn't really, to be fair, I'm not sure that she performed that well, but she was unable to express that criticism of a nation state and anti-Semitism are not the same thing in a clear and concise way during that hearing. And it might be that she was maybe not allowed to, because of the nature of a Senate hearing or a congressional hearing where they can just cut you off and you have to shut the fuck up. So that was part of it. He's going to say the second part is going to be plagiarism, and I haven't looked into that enough to decide either way.
Tolerate certain kinds of speech, whatever that is. There's certainly a question about the differential application of that on behalf of different groups. So that was one of the ways that she got into trouble. The other way she got into trouble was the vulnerability of plagiarism and a weak academic record. And, let me just say this early and everyone will come to it late. Plagiarism is the tip of the iceberg of attribution bullying, where effectively you have these people who determine who did what in the narrative-driven storytelling that is academic, and what papers get cited, which papers don't, what discoveries are named for certain people is determined largely by a tiny number of institutions, Harvard preeminent among them. And so Harvard just plays games morning, noon, and night with writing stories that put Harvard at the center and particular individuals at the top, whether or not those individuals have earned it or not. And what's hard for me is most people are now thinking, okay, Harvard is just full of it, but it isn't. It's half full of it and half the best place on earth to do anything important. And that tension is what's not recognized. Now, power has to take a back seat to academics and to discovery and to brilliance if this game is to be maintained. You can't constantly just exercise power and tell stories. So
I want to put just a pin in something really quick. Her job running the university was an administrative job. She is a bureaucrat. That is her job, is running the university. Somebody who has never published a paper in their life could be very good at the bureaucratic job of running a university. Like you have said that, in what you found in software engineering, and I'm going to paraphrase you here, and you can tell me if I'm getting it wrong, that the best software engineers are often not the best managers.
Absolutely correct. Yep.
So in this case, I think the same sort of like axiom, we could just apply it and just change a couple of the nouns out. The highest, the most accomplished academic is probably not going to be the person who's going to do the best job of running the bureaucracy of the university and delegating tasks and responsibilities to others.
Yep. Completely agree.
So that doesn't matter. If she plagiarized shit, then, again, I don't know, what I haven't seen though is, like accomplished academics coming out and saying she took my work.
So from what I have seen, she did not plagiarize anything. She failed to properly cite some things that she had in quote marks. So they were very obviously quotes. She wasn't like trying to say like, these are my words. They were very obviously quotes of other people. They just weren't properly cited, if that makes sense.
No, I understand. It's like if I say, if I forget, like I'm working on an article right now and I'm having I'm having some people with some experience copy edit it, and it's humbling. Then they're actually talking to me in the comments of the article about attribution a lot. They're like, "Hey, you actually need to attribute this better. You need to track this down. You have to remove this because the nature of the article is fairly inflammatory, as you might imagine." Especially if I pulled in some academics and journalists who I know to take a look at it on my behalf. All things considered, I should probably have a lawyer take a look at it too, but I ain't got one of those. But if basically what's missing is like a footnote, essentially, like that this comes from this particular paper. And I mean, that is a problem, but like the thing I wonder is like, was this early in her academic career? Was this like, is this all over?
Yeah, it was during her PhD. So it was when she was a student, an undergrad.
Yeah, still a student.
Yeah.
Okay. Then that may be just as much the fault of her advisor as her, because her advisor probably should have also been like, hey, you need to, but whatever. Like, I think this is all a smokescreen too. I think that she was canned because she wouldn't basically outlaw protests, the protest of the governing coalition of the Israeli government on her campus. I think that's why she was canned. That seems to be the bigger. It seems to be the elephant in the room, whereas the other thing was like a speck of dust on the floor.
Yeah, and the other thing was very obviously meant to stir up controversy where there really wasn't any.
Right.
Like if there was controversy, it wasn't controversy in the eyes of like the general public. It was controversy in the eyes of like the academic community, that like maybe they could say, this person had these quote misdeeds, if you could call them that, in her past, but like it certainly wasn't to the point where you would say like her entire career is in jeopardy because of these shortcomings in her past.
Her academic work as a student.
Yeah. Like this was clearly drummed up to be an excuse for like burning down her career for some other reason.
I think it might even been Chris Rufo, and I could be wrong here, but I think it might even been Chris Rufo that tweeted that exact thing out. Chris Rufo is like the bad guy in a cartoon who tells you exactly, like looks at the camera and like, here's the plan.
Yeah, exactly.
So in my history with this university, I've tried to figure out, why does it behave so differently than every other institution of research?
Is DEI the boogeyman that
does it though?
Worried about?
Does Harvard behave any differently than like Yale or like Princeton or like Stanford? Like, what is so different between them?
Because they're not listening to Eric.
None of them are listening to Eric.
Yeah, but Eric went there. Eric's an esteemed, an unfortunate alumni.
Of Stanford, right?
No, Harvard.
Oh, of Harvard. Okay. That's why they're so
every
different.
other institution
Okay.
of research.
Is DEI the boogeyman that everyone is worried about?
You know, this is so hard to even get into it.
It's not actually.
university-
Absolutely not is the answer that you're looking for,
Well,
Eric.
he
The only
didn't
reason
ask
that you
it-
can't say absolutely not is because either A, you are a racist, or B, you have been influenced by prominent racists
So
who
the
are
question,
against
HK,
DEI.
the question wasn't, is DEI the problem? If you heard the question, it was like, is DEI the boogeyman that everyone's talking about? And in that case, yes.
Well, I mean, that depends on how people are talking the boogeyman. So
And who everyone is.
yeah. I would say that no, DEI is not a boogeyman. DEI is not a boogeyman in the sense that people are talking about it. DEI is fine. Like DEI is good in almost every case that I've ever seen. Even the cases that are portrayed very poorly by the right-wing pundits and talking heads. DEI is good in those cases in general.
So the question by the host was asked in such a way that Eric could have gone any particular direction he wanted to with the answer to. The question wasn't specific, right? The question was, is this the boogeyman everyone's talking about? So that means they're not asking, is the problem here DEI? Is Harvard suffering because of diversity, equity, and inclusion? It's just like, are people talking about it, and is it a boogeyman? So that's like a very different question than the one that you attempted to answer. He should have asked the question that you attempted to answer, because that's a more pointed and specific question. But the point of this interview isn't really to ask that kind of question, right?
Yep.
The point of this interview is, boy, isn't it nice that we're having this interview.
In
Person
4K,
won
nonetheless.
World War II. Our universities won World War II.
That would be the Soviet Union that won World War II.
Measure. I mean, if you need codes broken, if you need new weapons
If
developed,
you need codes broken, that was a British guy named Turing.
supposed to have SEAL Team 6 of the human mind.
Yeah, the Brits killed him.
Call on, and that's supposed to be MIT, Caltech, Princeton, Harvard. It's a very small number of super prestigious universities. Part of the problem is,
Ooh, notice how he didn't include any public ones like Berkeley, UCLA. He included MIT. I guess MIT is a public university. I think it's Massachusetts government. But
think about, I don't even know how to say this exactly. If you think about a university as akin to an exotic car, a lot of people buy a McLaren or a Lamborghini or Ferrari because they like the styling, status. But the soul of all of those cars is racing, right? And the people who buy the cars for the racing sometimes are really annoyed by the fact that the cars are status symbols. And that's what a research university is to me.
What?
I'm interested in the racing, and other people are interested because it's sort of what you do to show that you got a $2 million bonus from your...
You know, if there's one thing that I know about Eric Weinstein, it's that he's not worried at all about status symbols. That's why he is the most humble man on earth.
this motherfucker fucking goes around claiming he unified physics by himself, like probably drunk on the back of a napkin, like in his spare time when he wasn't working for Peter Thiel, then got mad that nobody believed him. But yeah, of course, he's not, no status chasing here, friends.
Yeah, have we printed up the 2024 most humble man on earth?
No, we don't
award
need
for
to.
him?
You know, it's not year by year, friend. It's in this guy. It's a lifetime appointment. So the other thing that he's kind of got wrong here is that if it was only if there were only racing purists that wanted to buy these exotic, very fast cars, the demand for them would go down, and but he's supposed to be like really good at like money stuff. The demand would go down, and then there would be less incentive to produce these basically street legal race cars for people who can afford them, and so they wouldn't exist. It's like it's like how, you know, maybe you're annoyed at people who think they're gluten intolerant, right? But the people who have celiac disease are real glad a bunch of people running around complaining about their gluten intolerance, because now they can buy bread at Safeway, because now everybody thinks they shouldn't have gluten, and so there's a fucking whole like variety of products for them. So they're like, well, whatever. I think these, you know, whether or not they think those people are wrong, they're like, well, this is good for me. Now I can eat, right? Like, so
That's a really apt example. Yeah.
and it's the same thing with these sports cars. Yeah, sure, people are buying them as a status symbol, but that then makes, you know, a company like Ferrari, it makes them able to be profitable. Whereas if it was just people who want to drive this car at the edge, well, first of all, you're driving that car at the edge on the street, you should go to prison. But secondly, you do that, oh, you're going to crash and you're going to need a new Ferrari. And, you know, maybe you can only afford one if you're if you're really into like auto sport and stuff. The odds that you're going to be like really into driving fast and also very rich are pretty slim. So you're probably going to save up all your life to buy this fucking thing. And boy, are you glad there's demand from new money fucking Instagram influencers for these fucking cars, because they're able to fucking, you know, put that money back into the research and development to buy this car that you just want, because it's fucking amazing and it's as close to a Formula One car as you can afford that you're ever going to be able to just drive around. So he's just wrong. He always talks about incentives here, and the incentive for Ferrari isn't necessarily the purest. The incentive for Ferrari, like any other company, is to make fucking money.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't race it, I don't know what you're doing there, and I'd prefer that you'd leave. The purpose of a university is not.
Wait, if you don't race a Ferrari, there's no reason to own a Ferrari? Really? You can just like owning a Ferrari.
Like, that's the thing, is like, what if you don't? Yeah. Then what's the reason to have a car that handles or accelerates well at all? You know, you don't have to have the best one, but like most people, if given the choice, they'd like a car with a little bit of pep, right? Like, even just like a fucking, even like just the 3 Series BMW who's kind of quick and handles pretty well. And people aren't like driving it on the edge up a mountain road or whatever, but maybe they want to hit that mountain road and they don't, you know, they want to have a capable car to do that. Like,
why even own that when you could own a Toyota Tercel?
right. Well, that's what I'm saying is this analogy, this is really stupid, because even if you're not pushing the car to the edge, man, just for the average person getting in a car like that and just hitting a corner, even at like 60% of that car's capabilities, got to be just a huge kick in the ass if what you drove before it was like a sedan, right? Like,
Yeah.
Great
I
university.
feel like these are the ramblings of a man who doesn't understand economics, and it's surprising because this guy is supposed to be you know, well tuned in the world of economics, right? He's supposed to understand. He's in what's his name?
He works for Thiel.
PayPal guy.
He's Peter Thiel's. He's
Yeah,
the
Peter
managing.
Thiel.
The managing. Hold on, I want to real quick. He's the managing director of Thiel Capital. Thiel Capital is Peter's venture firm that is a boutique firm. The big firm is called, oh no, now I forget. Anyway, the big firm is called something else. It is the massive firm that invested in Facebook and whatnot, and he's a partner there. The Thiel Capital, basically for a while they were just calling it Thiel's Twinks, because he was just hiring all these fucking 20-year-olds for Thiel Capital. But yeah, but still he's working, like his job is to make money for this firm. Yeah. But also he doesn't understand like cars. Like people don't. You don't you don't make a $2 million investment in a car and then drive it on the edge to the point where if you just fucking accidentally tap the gas, you're fucking going into the side of a mountain, right? Like, it seems like a great way to not have a $2 million car anymore.
Yeah, I don't understand why this guy is in charge of anyone's money, let alone a billionaire's money.
And we can't afford to lose that.
So Thiel's big firm is called Founders Fund.
I don't think people have any idea how important it is to be able to call on your own nation's top academics when you need the truth, you need something done, you need
And you need a nuclear weapon.
help. And so whatever it is that is denaturing our universities, that's turning this into a nightclub where the whole trick is to get past the bouncer for the cool kids, has to be stopped.
But what does it say that the ex-president of Harvard is someone whose academic bona fides were found out to be plagiarized, largely?
Not true. But also
Largely.
also a wrong skill set for running a university or any organization.
Trying to say the balance between.
I'm sorry, but
sharp
largely, wasn't it like 2 papers out of hers were improperly cited?
Man, I
How
want to
is that
spend a lot of time. Man, I would
largely?
love to spend a lot of time figuring, like, litigating exactly how many plagiarized sentences she has. That's going to be a lot of fun. We should spend most of our time there. I'd rather talk about race cars.
elbows and the sharp minds is wildly off. And why is it? Nobody wants to say what everybody is thinking, which is this person is not fit to be the president of Harvard University. And why is that? Because they're going to get called a name. This was made all about race. Oh, what, you can't tolerate scholarship of this?
I'm sorry, it wasn't made all about race. It was all about race. Well, like 70% about race, 29% about gender, 1% about like being an academic in Harvard.
And again, she was not. Her position was a non-academic position. It was an administrative position, which is
But
not.
yeah, it was 99% about race and gender.
I'm not going to divine the percentages. I think there might be grievance from. It might also just be that she's a progressive. It might be political. But again, I don't want to spend too much time on this. But the skill set there is that of an administrator. She's an administrator, or was an administrator. It doesn't matter. You could have gone from. I mean, you could have gone from managing a restaurant chain to managing Harvard and probably done a pretty good fucking job. Because it's the skill set of an administration.
From a black female? It's like, you're starting. I wasn't even questioning this before, but now you're saying a scholar's scholar. Methinks that does protest too much.
We'll get back to talking to Eric in 1 minute, but first, isn't your dream science prove brainy? So if you have money, get a free by going to the Modern Wisdom. There was a quote from Howard Jacobson that said,
I'm sorry, was that
I hope Claudine...
was that drinkle my nut? Is that what that was?
Sure.
There were no vowels in that URL, so I'm going to assume that it was drinkle my nut.
Gay marks the start of people who know nothing losing their jobs.
Look, we need to bring back exclusion. We're talking way too much about inclusion. Inclusion and exclusion are two halves of a normal process.
So to be fair, they did exclude a lot of other people from that job who weren't the president of Harvard, who were probably eminently qualified and had wanted to be the president of Harvard. So they did, but baked into this is the fact that is not the fact. I'm sorry. It's his probably going to be his hypothesis that she was a diversity hire.
Probably. So what I'm assuming he means by we need to bring back exclusion is we need to only hire white men again, which is what we used to do before the diversity, equity, inclusion thing. Is we used to hire only white men. And I'm going to assume that what Eric means by we need to bring back exclusion is we need to no longer allow women or people of color at all in administration roles in higher education.
Or at least at the top of the layer cake in administration.
Yeah. So unless he convinces me in the next few sentences that that's not what he means, I'm pretty sure that that's what he means.
Claudine Gay needed to be excluded from that office, not included. Now, if you told me that Condoleezza Rice was the president of Harvard, she's black, she's female, and I don't agree with her politically. But I don't think many people would have a qualification issue with Condoleezza Rice.
But wait, she's not even fucking well known for being in academia. Now you're contradicting yourself.
She's in politics, not academia.
Yeah, she was in the Bush administration. Like, again,
he's just saying that because she's also a black woman, right?
Right, but again, like, he's now contradicting himself, right? She may have she probably did great at a university. I don't know if she was ever a university professor. She may very well have been. But she left academia and went into public policy. I don't think she ever ran for office, right? But she was a member of the Bush administration, and she'd probably do a fine job of running Harvard. That's fine, but like, he's now undercutting his position that this person should have some kind of academic excellence. Whereas this person was a cabinet level, like, known well for being a cabinet level person in the Bush administration, which I would say is a fine thing to be, but it is not actually. Whatever. She's a very accomplished person, and this, I'm not going to quibble that she is accomplished in what she wanted to accomplish, but I don't think did she apply? Probably not. She's probably just counting money. That's what I'd do if I was her.
Let's say James Gates is a black man, a distinguished physicist. This has to do with people coming from weaker subjects, particularly activist subjects that didn't exist before the late 60s, early 70s, when all of these things were created. To an extent,
Which ones, Eric?
I don't know if you recall the pictures of, Willard Straight Hall at Cornell with the black students emerging with weapons. There was a revolutionary fervor at the end of the 60s, early 70s, and you have people creating like women's studies, black studies.
What he means by that is, and I'm paraphrasing here, he means the blacks got all uppity in the 60s.
So
is what he means.
And he's saying these are weaker subjects because they're, women's studies. It's going to include history, sociology, anthropology. They're going to be, focused on like women, basically throughout history and throughout humanity. And he seems to think that's a bad thing to study, because he is Eric Weinstein.
Yeah, because he sides with the men of history. The men who dominated history up until the point that he thinks history started being a poor subject in collegiate studies. When you started to study women. And it turns out women were doing all these great things well up until this point. The only problem is that the men were getting credit, and he thinks the men should continue to get credit. Whereas women's studies shows that actually all these women who did all this work, they should get credit for the work that they did.
Right. A famous example of that is the book Frankenstein. Right. That's written by Mary Shelley.
Mm-hmm.
Thankfully, we've known that long enough, and her name's been on the fucking publication of the book for long enough that now I don't even remember the dude who fucking stole the book from her, if I'm going to be completely fucking honest.
Yeah, she wrote that book, and it was sold under a pseudonym by a male author's name. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, that's just one example, and it's like,
and these departments were basically born of activism more than scholarship. I'm not saying no scholarship gets done there, but scholarship and activism are essentially fused. And many of us think activism is great. Just don't do it next to our physics and math and computer science and music.
Yeah, absolutely. Colleges aren't the right place for activism.
Well, and-
famously, colleges known for being absolutely status quo 100% of the time. No protest action. No activism taking place on their campuses. Famously, throughout history.
So what he's saying is he thinks these fields, that these aren't like the students having a protest on campus. That's actually distinct from what he's claiming here. Again, I've said this before. If somebody writes us a nasty email, it doesn't go to you. So what he's trying to say here, or what he is saying here, is that the activism is inherent in these fields of study, and he thinks that's bad. Now, what was interesting is he's like, don't do it next to our physics department. And I'm like, well, how many meters away from the physics department do these activist studies need to happen? Is it, 10 meters, 100 meters? Fucking, should it be on the other side of the country? Like, how far away, Eric? How far away? How far away? Both literally and figuratively, how far away should this be? But also,
I'm guessing for him, he would measure it in megameters.
So his definition of activism is, like you were saying, that it's women's studies. Somehow that's an activist field, whereas it's not. And and not for nothing, like, those people still have to take like the general classes like everyone else. They have to fulfill math requirements, history requirements, some science requirements, etc., etc., etc. So they're not just learning things that are directly in their field. The idea is that they get a fairly well-rounded education with a focus on a particular area of study. And if they choose women's studies or black studies, that's actually totally fine. Actually, they're going to be in classes with people who are on what he would call a hard science track for like more general education stuff.
If what you're really there to do is to ignore certain things and accentuate others and not search for the truth, that's not an ignoble pursuit. It's just, that's not what
the truth, according to
scholarship is.
Eric Weinstein, by the way.
It's about understanding things and getting them right. And we've gone down a terrible turn. But, just consider, I think your listeners might enjoy Googling the string, cook something up to ease him out. That was a phrase that was used internally in documents within Harvard when a Kenyan was ejected from the Harvard economics department back in the 60s. And what had really happened is that this guy had passed all of his exams. He was fully qualified. He was working on his dissertation to become a Harvard PhD in economics. And the university, I think, decided that it didn't like an African man sleeping with white women in America. And it got rid of him.
Oh, wouldn't it be great if there was an area of study at the university that looked into incidents like that and others of similar nature, where you just replace a couple of the nouns and maybe it's a woman or a person, a Latino person, or maybe even anti-Russian bias or some shit. Maybe there's room in the university for studies of things like that. Oh wait, no, that's activism. It's funny. This guy just brought up a fucking example of something that like completely contradicts the other point he was trying to make. I was the only black person ever excluded from anything in Harvard. Actually, it was just a fluke. Weird thing. Just weird. Never happened before.
He was in good standing. That the only reason we know about that is that turned out to be Barack Obama Sr. So Harvard conspired 100% with the State Department to destroy the career of Barack Obama Sr. And that's how Harvard works. In the star chambers, it cooks. And what does it do? It cooks things up. It cooks up stories. It cooks up attribution. It gives people credit for things that they didn't do first. It takes credit away from other people. I was there in the mid 90s when it destroyed my wife's career through a star chamber called the Harvard Jobs Market Meeting. And all the economists go into a closed room, they lock the door, and they say, who's got a good student? And my wife was the student of a Nobel award winner in economics. And she had done something which was to bring an entirely new kind of mathematics into economic theory to replace something called the marginal revolution, a new form of differential calculus called gauge theory. And a guy named Dale Jorgensen, who recently died, said, nope. So even though a Nobel level economist was promoting her and saying this is great stuff, she should go anywhere in the country, a woman of color from the developing world. An old white guy just said no. And, in a second.
But you coming in there and suggesting that, okay, I'm in the economics department, but check this out. We're going to use a new kind of calculus to figure out things about economics that people are going to, in that economics department, are going to look at you and be like, have you lost your mind? Have you done the work to demonstrate that this is, going to work? Have you done, why aren't you presenting this to the math department in this case? And she's like, oh, my boyfriend's in the math department. I don't want to spend any more time with him than I already do. Probably something like that. But it's also interesting that he created a whole new kind of physics and she created a whole new kind of economics, and they're married. Oh shit, that's a weird coincidence.
Yep, it's an amazing world we live in where that kind of coincidence happens all the time.
Oh, and his brother also made a new kind of
Look at that.
Oh shit. New kind of biology thing that everybody didn't take that seriously. This is a whole
brand new medicinal theory.
This is a whole like family of that remember that that meme, we demand to be taken seriously. This is you just replace all those with the fucking Weinstein family. Like, I wonder, and I don't know this, I wonder if it was his influence on her that was like part of the impetus for her to pursue this, or if they're both just delusional as fuck.
One can't know.
One
can hope to find out, though.
Ordered in the pile. And why were they doing this? Because they wanted to fix the CPI. And I don't mean fix as in cure it. I mean fix as in fixing a baseball game. Because the CPI is used to transfer wealth.
What's CPI?
The Consumer Price Index. And the reason it's important is that mostly what the government does after its military is entitlements, Social Security payments, Medicare payments, and those are indexed to inflation.
So people pay into those programs their entire working life, so they are in fact entitled to those benefits when they retire, Eric.
And the way in which it takes in money is through taxes, and those tax brackets are indexed to inflation. So it's very funny. Everybody focuses on like central banking and the Fed, but the Bureau of Labor Statistics maintains a statistic that transfers billions and billions of dollars. And if the CPI is overstated, it pays out a lot of money and takes in very little money. And if you can get it to be understated, then you get to take in much more money. You don't have to pay old and sick people. And that's what the Harvard department was doing.
So there's a single figure that mediates everything that gets squeezed through. How funny.
And so what we were doing as a collaboration was showing the right mathematical framework to calculate the CPI.
But that would have allowed less fuckery.
It would have allowed less, to use the technical terms.
So,
but the point being that the Harvard Jobs Market Meeting inside of the Harvard Economics.
Does he not curse?
I don't know. I don't know enough about Chris Williamson. But the problem here is that there's another answer for this, is that her scholarship was bad, or maybe even not bad but incomplete. Maybe, right? That it wasn't all there yet, and that a big institution like Harvard and like the economics fucking school at Harvard changing that, like, that's like turning a barge, right? Like it is a big powerful institution with a lot of inertia. So I don't know why anybody would presume to go, even if they're right, why they would presume to go in there and just change everything.
Is a star chamber the way the immigration status of Obama's father was a star chamber, as was the way in which my PhD was? Over and over again, Harvard closes its doors and it makes stuff up.
This sounds unsalvageable. As
No.
Well, it sounds like we've got the people leading it have gotten in through some combination of diversity, equity, inclusion, nepotism, game playing, harsh elbows. Seems like the
They
people
just hired a guy named Daniel S. Freed, who's one of the greatest mathematicians alive in my area. Dan and I might disagree about string theory.
But Dan, I wonder. I wonder if this guy makes fun of Eric. I bet he does. Mathematicians are fucking not known for their parties, but I bet the Harvard math department, I bet you get some good jokes that you don't understand at all about Eric because you're not a mathematician.
Clearly spoke like a man who's never been to a math party.
Scholarly disagreements. Just had lunch with him in Austin, Texas. That guy's a scholar through and through. I can disagree with him. I can fight with him. I can have my differences. I would support him 100% as a scholar to take over, as a provost or dean if they were interested. There's no shortage of absolutely fantastic people at Harvard.
But if they're unable or unwilling to play the political games that are required, unless they're prepared to file their elbows down to a sharp point.
Well, this is what Bill Ackman is doing that's so confusing. I have the feeling, I don't know this guy at all. Don't have positive, negative
I thought you would have crossed paths with them at some point.
You would think. There are various people who I don't cross paths with for
They probably avoid you.
whatever reason. I don't even think we follow each other. Or maybe I follow him, but I don't think he follows me.
You should block him, Eric. You block everybody.
I think that the problem is that a lot of these people don't know how the research game works. They think about this in terms of the Harvard Business School, the law school, the undergraduate alumni network. They don't see the part of Harvard that actually produces the mystique, the analog of the racing for the exotic car. And I
Wait, whoa. The Harvard Law Department doesn't produce any mystique. Sir, you should take a look at the Senate. You should check out the Senate. Check out the boards of directors of Fortune 500 companies. Check out the top of the layer cake in the private sector, and you're going to find a lot of Harvard law grads there. Yeah, U.S. presidents. Like you're gonna. That is unless the mystique is just something that Eric is defining as things that Eric thinks are impressive, which could be the case. We have to always remember that this is all like filtered through the lens of like Eric should be the one to decide what's important.
Yeah, the ERI, the Eric Rule of Index.
Right.
That the right thing to do right now is to appoint a curmudgeonly, research-oriented person in a super rigorous field. It doesn't even have to be STEM. Like music is an incredibly rigorous field. But what we need right now is rigor. We don't need another person from the social sciences at this moment. We need somebody to reestablish that Harvard is an intolerant place, that it has the highest possible standards. It's unabashedly elitist. It's unabashedly American. And it cannot live with DEI. DEI is a parasitization of our best hopes and dreams. And we have to recognize that.
I think what he's saying here is we need to go back to like the time where Harvard didn't allow black people in. I think that's what he's saying.
So I think these people actually have nostalgia for a fantasy version of the 1990s. So there were
90s? No, I think it's the 1950s.
So I think these people have a nostalgia for a fantasy version of the 1990s because these are like elder Gen X or like younger, like lost generation folks. And they were in these institutions in the 90s, and they'll probably tell you that in the 90s there wasn't any racism and that it was a pure meritocracy, and that's why the economy was booming and all that shit. I legitimately believe this. Because he doesn't. Oh, anyway, like that's what I think's going on here, and it's because that's when he was a fucking like a postdoc or whatever, or a grad student. So it's like romanticizing a past that never really existed, and I think it's the 90s. I really do, just based on how old they are, because they were in their 20s or late 20s, early 30s, and life is good in your late 20s and your early 30s, especially if you're at Harvard, right? You're doing pretty good. Doing pretty good.
No matter what era it is that they're fawning over, it's still a fantasy.
Yeah, absolutely.
DEI has to be destroyed so that goals like diversity and getting the right people into the room are not sacrificed on the altar of mediocrity and lack of ethics.
It's interesting that...
I'm sorry, wait, DEI equals mediocrity and lack of ethics?
Well, sure.
How?
Because
Eric says so.
yes, and it's so crazy. It's so crazy.
Like I could maybe see mediocrity if you view like test scores. If you think that test scores are a perfect indicator of how someone's economic output would become throughout their life, which it's not. It's absolutely not. Like your test scores are almost entirely determined on your socioeconomic factors. Like maybe 20 to 30% of your test scores are based on like your actual like intellectual input to the test. And 60 to 70, wait, did I do that math right? Clearly, I'm not one of the top,
so
whatever, 10% of the test takers.
The other thing.
A large portion of your test scores are determined on your socioeconomic status, whether you were able to secure a breakfast that morning, whether you were able to like drive your own car to the test taking facility, whether you were able to afford the education that you would need to know like the knowledge, not intelligence, which is a different thing, but the knowledge that you need to pass the tests, because there's like these tests test knowledge in a lot of senses, not intelligence. Some of it is intelligence for sure, but a lot of it is knowledge. And if you don't have that knowledge because you couldn't afford the education to receive that knowledge, then you're just SOL, even though you're just as smart as anyone else in that field. You just couldn't afford to have the knowledge or like to have the access to the knowledge even.
Also, not for nothing, you're not getting into Harvard with what he would say are mediocre test scores. Just to be like extra clear here, like, you know what I'm saying? Like you're no matter who you are, even with the like legacy crap they have, or if your granddad and your dad went there, if you don't have good test scores, you're not getting in anyway.
Yeah, even if you are able to overcome mountains of adversity, mountains of struggles to reach the level where you are, if you are not at the same level as someone else who didn't have those mountains to get over, who just had a flat fucking path to walk across as they went through their adolescent years, you know, spoon-fed all of this like premium level education. Like even though you surpassed those mountains of adversity in between you, you're still not going to get in because you were 1 point lower than the guy who was born with a silver spoon in his mouth.
So again, his claim that this is a mediocrity or whatever is not borne out by the facts. You're not getting into any of these elite universities with what he would consider to be a mediocre academic performance or mediocre scores on standardized tests. It's just not. It's not happening. This is just untrue. This is all a proxy for the fact that universities are considering other factors besides these test scores. So you got to have, you got to have the good score, but then other factors are considered on top of it, whatever they may be. And he doesn't like that.
No, but according to the Supreme Court now, you can't consider race at all.
Sure, but that's not what Eric's talking about. He's just mad that they're considering other factors at all, and that it's not, if it was up to him, I think he would want it to be legacy, academic performance, and test scores, and that's it. I think that's what he would probably think is the ideal scenario if I had to wager a guess.
They had made some changes to the ways that grades and diversity account for admissions, but they didn't get rid of legacy admissions, which kind of tells you everything that you need to know about what's being protected.
No, I don't think it does.
Is this not another way to ensure that the people, just to ensure that power is held in the people who already have it?
See, this guy thought he was going to fucking get Eric to go after legacy admissions, but Eric, like I said just a minute ago, I was like, Eric probably thinks that's a good factor. Like, do you come from a good family that's been to Harvard before? Like, I think he thinks that's a factor that I think, if I had to guess, that's what he probably thinks that's good. Like somebody in chat said, it's like an academic version of like eugenics almost. Like,
but very soon this thing isn't going to be worth very much.
I don't think that people care. I think this is the same as looking at why Marvel are going downhill.
Yeah.
What?
Say more.
There are a lot of movies coming out at the moment. I think the most recent Star Wars director openly said, I enjoy making movies that make men feel uncomfortable.
To Jon Stewart.
Star Wars.
Yeah. Is Star Wars Marvel? I thought those were different things. I mean, yes, they're both owned by Disney, but is now Disney equal to Star Wars and Marvel?
It also like is just an incorrect that Marvel is not making money or what they said going downhill, to be perfectly honest. Like what is, and I mean, and these things are also cyclical, right? Like for a long time, the biggest movies were rom-coms. There were a time when the biggest movies were just comedies. And for a long time now, the biggest movies have been like superhero movies. And maybe that cycle is coming to an end where these movies will still be profitable, but maybe 5 or 10 years from now, they won't be the biggest blockbuster. Maybe it'll be dramas or, some maybe, related to a current genre of movie, but something we're not really necessarily familiar with. Maybe some new kind of amalgamation of maybe drama, comedy, and like suspense or whatever will come together, and that'll be like a genre of movie that is then popular. Like, were they saying this shit about the rom-coms are going downhill because they're now the directors are saying shit I don't like to Jon Stewart? No, motherfucker, that just ran its course, man. You can only do so many clones of When Harry Met Sally, okay? Like,
yeah, like it's been superhero movies for the past like 15 years.
Right.
If we keep going at this trajectory, by the year like 2050, it'll just be like all of the superheroes just hanging out in like it'll be Friends but with superheroes, basically.
I think it would be even funnier if it was like a long form, or a superhero movie was just a 3-hour long form podcast interview where they pretended they knew about physics and history. Got Superman in there playing Eric Weinstein, fucking Aquaman in there playing Dave Rubin. Like, yeah, that if you think about it, like you can go back further, right? Like for a long time it was dramas, like Gone with the Wind and like the Humphrey Bogart era. These were all like romantic sort of drama movies, and that ran its course. And then I think after that was like the sort of Saturday Night Live, like going into the 70s or whatever, was the Saturday Night Live, the 70s through like the 90s, all these big movies with people who were Saturday Night Live alums that were like comedy movies like Caddyshack and, some unfortunate movies like the what was the one where the guy, Revenge of the Nerds. Unfortunate movies like Revenge of the Nerds. Like,
oh fuck, that movie was, Jesus Christ, that was a problematic movie to the extreme.
and somebody in the chat just mentioned Wayne's World, which seems like Wayne's World and Austin Powers seem to be like the end of that cycle, right?
Yeah. Yeah, like it, and for that cycle it was a little different than the superhero movies, because the superhero movies, in regards specifically to Marvel, they ended the arc. You know, the arc started in like 2006, and that series, the Avengers arc, started with Iron Man in, you know, I'm you know what I'm saying. It ended with Iron Man dying.
Narnia. Oh,
basically.
remember the Chronicles of Narnia?
Like, what I'm saying is, like, that arc finished, and now
Sure.
The people that are saying like, oh, superhero movies are going downhill, oftentimes what they're talking about is Iron Man's not there.
Right, but
It's like, yeah, he died in the story.
These things are I'm uninterested in like the plot, right? The overarching plot that's going on in the universe, in this imaginary universe. What I'm saying is,
yeah, it's a very simplistic view of movies in general to think that like the superhero genre was specifically Marvel, or that like the fact that like Marvel movies aren't as popular as they were several years ago, when like the fucking like major arc was ending. Like, yeah, sure, obviously that's going to be a bigger event than, it's like saying like the first game of the season of football is not as big of an event as the Super Bowl. Yeah, obviously. Okay, no one's saying that football is dying because there weren't as many views of the first game of the season as there were on the Super Bowl.
Sure. But it could just be the end of the cycle too. We could be moving on to comedy coming back as the big blockbusters or whatever. Or movies like the Barbie movie, right? Which is sort of, Barbie's almost a superhero in some sort of ways, right? But
oh my God, I would love to. Let's absolutely consider Barbie to be a superhero.
Never mind.
She never ages.
Never mind. Let's
keep
Barbie.
She's never
going with the content. Never mind.
Maybe one of the most male-dominated audience movies that I can think of.
Yes, it's self-destructive. So what I'm trying to say is that you can say, oh, we're going to keep things open for legacy admissions, right? But very soon, you're not going to want to be associated with. I mean, already Yale has mismanaged its research university for years. It made a very bad decision not to go hard on sciences and STEM, and focused, in my opinion, too much on softer fields. So what happens when Harvard is no longer that prestigious? If people start laughing at Harvard, what good is it going to be that you can get your kid in?
I don't disagree, but I think people are so out of touch. The people who are in power are unable or unwilling to see.
One of these days, no one's going to care about Harvard. I just know it. I'm Eric Weinstein, and I just know it. One of these days.
But like, what if that's true? And like, what if there's just a life cycle to this kind of influence in our society? And like, maybe now,
I don't think that that's true.
But I'm not saying that it is. I'm saying, what if that's the case? Then what? Is it the fault of the fucking black people going to Harvard? Or is it just that like maybe now like it's moving from the East Coast to the West Coast, and now it's gonna be like Stanford, Berkeley, UCLA that are like then what? Okay, it's fine with me.
It's the fault of whatever was happening at Harvard at that time, coincidentally.
Right, and that's fine. Like, I don't understand. Eric doesn't have anything to do with fucking Harvard anymore. He doesn't have anything to do with any of this, right? He's like a fucking talking head, and he works for Peter Thiel. What the fuck? Why does anybody give a shit what Eric thinks about universities and academia? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, he has nothing to do with it.
Yeah, I mean, we can just assume that there was like a furry convention at Harvard at the time, and it's the fault of the furries, because furries ruin everything. So, it was the furries.
I'd love it if there was a furries department at Harvard where they were doing like cultural anthropology on the furry movement and community.
FDH, the furry department of Harvard.
Quickly, the stock price is plummeting. I don't think that they're able to see this. Thinking about it, especially using the Marvel example again, or some of the things that are coming out of Disney, you have a quantifiable figure. What was the opening weekend at the box office? You know exactly where this is. There are fewer places to hide.
So this isn't where movies make money anymore, is it? This box office either. Like the industry's changing dramatically. It was already changing before COVID, and COVID accelerated this change. And where these movies are going to make money most of the time isn't necessarily, they're going to, a blockbuster movie, people will go to the movie theater to see it, but they're going to make their money on licensing to like Netflix, and Disney will make money on the back end just by putting it on Disney Plus and getting subscribers when it hits Disney Plus. They'll make, I don't know, whatever other service, right? This is where the money is now. That's just where.
Yep, licensing and streaming. Yeah,
and even we mentioned the comedies, the comedy thing. Wayne's World sort of made fun of this thing that there was a big tail on starting to happen on movies with merchandise, right? You remember, and Spaceballs made fun of that too, right? Like this was already happening, where the tail is where all the you get this bump at the beginning if it's a big movie, but then you have this tail, like that Barbie made all this money, but you think people not buying more Barbies now?
Yep.
Oh, you think there aren't new Barbies coming out based on the movie, where now the people that wrote, they may have licensed the Barbie IP, but now some of that IP belongs to the movie. Get the fuck, like, this is the industry's changing. This is like complaining about like the fact that bands aren't making all their money because of radio play. Like,
yeah. Yep.
This is, or that they're not, nobody's buying a cassette tape of my band anymore.
Yeah. Our cassette sales are terrible. Therefore, the entire music industry is terrible.
Yeah. Taylor Swift hasn't sold any cassettes.
I think ever, right? She's never sold any cassettes. Yeah, she's she's the worst performing cassette artist ever in history.
Did you know that Jamiroquai had a real tough time marketing their 8-tracks? Worst performance of a disco band ever on the 8-track.
What's funny is like Taylor Swift vinyl has actually been selling quite a bit.
Yeah, but
like every time I go into Target, I see Taylor Swift vinyl in their vinyl section. Like,
but that's the Taylor Swift fans you probably don't want to hang out with, because they're just like, hold on, I have to clean my record. It's like, shut the fuck up. I was a DJ.
Like half the vinyl they have in stock is Taylor Swift vinyl, and not because it's not selling, it's because it is selling.
Here's the number. What did it cost? What did you make opening weekend?
Right.
And you have projections and you have targets, presumably, that you want to hit. If that number doesn't cause people to think, maybe we don't need another narrative about an all-female cast that is better than the men without overcoming any challenges.
What you're not looking at is...
What's wrong with an all-female cast?
If you look at Mike Hopkins' work on the Covariant variant in the mathematics department, that's like opening weekend statistics.
What?
Man, great stuff happens at Harvard. Make no mistake about it. Harvard is an amazing and horrible place. And we're going to all now focus on how dumb it is and how horrible it is. Yeah. And like, then you're not seeing the tragedy. You're not seeing, look, I didn't have an advisor. I was one of the only people you'll ever meet with a PhD that had no advisor.
But wait a minute. I thought he mentioned earlier that, anyway, I think they had a meeting about Eric. I think they're like, listen, we got to get rid of this guy's been here for too long. All right. I guess he's pretty good at math, whatever. Nobody here wants to be his advisor. Nobody wants to listen to him at this. Can we just give this guy a PhD and get him the fuck out of here? I think that would. I mean, I have no evidence to back this up. So this is, purely conjecture, but these are just people. And I don't think most people want to hang out with this guy. I think his only friend ever is Peter Thiel.
I don't know if Peter Thiel is his friend, but I know what you mean.
Sounds like he's a pretty likable guy. And by oh shit, you know what? We made it further into this than I thought we were going to. We made 25 minutes in about an hour and 25 minutes. So that's not so bad.
We made it twice as far as you thought.
To be fair, I thought we were going to do 10 minutes in an hour. We'd have to get Eric to run the math on that for us. But who wants to listen to him explain the fucking simple arithmetic involved? Like, honestly, who wants to listen to him explain that? Do I have to apologize for the show again? What a garbage episode of this show we just did.
You do not have to apologize for the show again. Everyone, you're welcome for that horrible show. You're welcome for subjecting you to Eric Weinstein for an hour and 20 minutes. We do the show every week live on twitch.tv/Echoplex Media. That is at 7 p.m. Pacific. And after the show, every week we do red light, where we turn the lights red. We pour an alcoholic drink in our drinks, and we have a lot of fun. Come join us anytime live. If not, keep listening to the podcast. After the song, we'll be back for red light. Here is Boomers by Periscope.